Welcome back to the Being Mother Hustler podcast.
Whoop,
I
whoop, whoop.
have this awesome man of impact,
Whoa,
Buck Weiss, local
that's a that's
celebrity.
that's a lot to live up to. I don't know if no one's ever called me that before, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Hey, what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait for my listeners to really hear what you're going through right now, because I know you just recently departed from where I actually used to listen to you on your radio show locally
That's
in
right.
Portland.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
I've been in broadcast my entire life. It's like riding a bike. It's something that never leaves me. So when I was 17 years old, I started my first radio show in Tampa, Florida. I got into TV, and so like I dabble back and forth. I can never leave it. Obviously digital like popped off and took off, and people started creating their own content and programming on platforms like YouTube and Facebook and live streaming on Twitter. And so, in that world, I sort of went through transformations and started working for agencies. And so radio just always pulls me back in. They're always like, hey, would you come to a traditional FM radio show? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And then I get too busy and things don't work out and I have to go back into other things.
you have to align yourself back to what you really want to do, because I think
That's exactly it.
that's what you're doing right now. You're realigning yourself back to whatever big vision you have. You talked about childhood, and while you were a kid, you've always wanted to be, or probably had a radio show early on. Tell us about that childhood.
Yeah, how far back should I start? Where do you want me to do that, Karen? Because I'll go back to like 5 years old in Texas if you want. But
Let's do it.
I think my childhood really started in high school. There were pivotal moments in high school that really shaped who I am. I'll never forget Mr. Barnes, my television production teacher, who really allowed me the autonomy to be creative and understand how to tell a story and have all the equipment and resource available to be able to do that. And that's what really catapulted my interest in media in general, whether it be in digital or traditional. And so my first job out of high school was working for Fox in Tampa and being a field producer and learning how to write stories and ask the right questions and dig. And I got a lot of mentorship along the way. I worked at NBC, I was at Fox, and then my first gig was at Clear Channel, which is now called iHeart, obviously.
Yes.
But that's how old I am, Karen. I used to work at a place called Clear Channel. So if you remember that, you know how old I am.
I sure
But
do.
yeah, so I worked at Clear Channel, and and that's when I got a bug for radio specifically. I liked the long form talk format. It was really compelling and interesting to me. And it's funny how being able to capture somebody's attention, say something that's interesting, keep that audience for a very specific amount of time has all been a craft. Even though I started when I was very young, it's a craft that has molded and shaped my ability to do that and transcend not just radio, but live speaking or digital advertising or creative, very specific creative campaigns. I've been able to take that and use it as a way to really make it a part of who I am and put it into everything that I do. So high school was very pivotal for me. I grew up with my mom and two sisters. My parents, they had divorced at a young age. And so I had, what I tell people is like, I lived in a house with all ladies. And so I lived with three moms, because when you are the only boy in a house with two sisters, they're also your mother. So, and even though one's younger and one's older, it didn't matter. So, but it was fantastic. Anyone who's grown up around all women, those kind of guys are there. And I'm not saying this because of me specifically. It's just, they're just an elite man. They have a real understanding and compassion and respect that most men don't have. Like my wife never has to tell me to put the seat down, because I learned at a young age how to do that because my sisters weren't going to let me, be disrespectful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I call every man in my podcast a man of impact. Like you said, people or men that grew up around women, especially some sort of like a high level of not really expectation, but
Right.
level of respect for women. And I think
Sure.
that that helps you through your career as well, you know, and your life in general. As you say, your
Yeah.
wife, you mentioned your wife.
Yeah.
What you talked about Mr. Barnes that made a little or a lot of impact on you by
Sure.
providing you all those access to equipments. What about your
Hmm.
mom? What kind of
Hmm.
impact do you think your mom had instilled in you and your sisters, other than, you know, being your boss growing up?
Yeah. That's a great question, Karen. My mom, she was, I grew up in the South. And so there's a different culture in the South than other parts of the country. And respect was something that my parents, my mom specifically, taught me at a very young age.
Hmm.
She had a really good system. You had to use your please and your thank yous and your yes ma'ams and your no sirs. And if you did that, if you were able to have that baseline respect and communication with people, then she would reward you. So every day it was a competition between my sisters and I to see who could be more respectful. And it's like that's where it all started at a young age. It's just understanding the art of communication, which eventually turns into the art of sales, right? Because at the end of
Yes.
the day, if you can have that communication, if you can earn that respect from somebody, then you have the ability to open their mind to new ideas and new products and new possibilities. And so, my mom was also, she was a magician, and she
Wow.
was she did birthday parties. She was a ventriloquist. She had a little doll. It was kind of creepy. Like I was always scared of the doll. Like I thought it was like a Chucky scenario, like it was going to
Oh
kill
my
me in my
gosh.
sleep. Yeah, but she would go do birthday parties. She would do magic and ventriloquism, and so she was always kind of like a show person as well. She liked to put on a show and entertain people. So we were always doing. My mom taught me like late night skits and dressing up. We were always. I mean, there must be 80 photos of me in a dress with a wig on. That
Wow.
we would do like
Can't wait to
skit
see that.
night. Yeah, no, it's all over the place. I'm sure you'll see it somewhere. But she was instrumental in bringing out that creative side of me, but also teaching me the respect and communication side of things. So she's an awesome woman. So now I have 3 kids,
Yes,
6,
I see that.
3, and 1. And my wife and I, we had to hire help. My wife has 2 jobs. I was at one point doing
Whoa.
5 jobs. Yeah, now I'm a CMO of CardoneVentures, and I'm learning to scale myself in a way that I wasn't able to do in years past. But
Yes.
we had to hire help to raise these 3 kids. We had nannies and we've got home managers, and I talked to my mom. I just saw my mom in Miami. She drove down to see me while I was here in Miami, and I'm like, she did it with 3 kids. She is a public school teacher. I don't know
All on
if you
her
know
own.
what public school teachers make, but I mean, 3 kids on the public school system, and by herself, and it's mind blowing to me.
I know.
Now with 3 kids, I don't know how she did it. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I think about that a lot because I only have 2. And then I have
Right.
help through my husband, and, you know,
Nice.
single parenting is something else. And it's a
Right.
true hustle. And, you know, moms already hustle as it is, just being a mom, but
Right.
also a dad that's very engaged in their kids' life,
Right.
like yourself and my husband. And you think about, how did my mother do it? My mother had 6
Yeah.
plus my dad, who was a
Yeah.
problem dad, who was a problem, not dad, but husband. And so she had to
Yeah.
take care of 7 kids
Wow.
all
Wow.
on her own. And he was a gambler.
Yeah.
So he would like spend all her money. So she'll have to figure out. We grew up in the Philippines. So she'll have to
Yeah. That's
figure out,
awful.
yeah, how to feed us.
What?
And
How old are your kids, Karen?
13 and 10, both boys. They're really amazing age right
13
now.
and
And
10. Okay, so that's awesome. Those are good ages.
yeah.
Um, and so, what do you think the hardest part as a mother with 2 kids growing up has been for you? Like, what's the struggle been?
I think it's like, am I going to mess this up? You know, I constantly think about how to raise them in the right the most right way, because I think we're somewhat going to mess them up one way or another. But
Karen, can you hear me? I lost you.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Let's see. Are you there? Yeah, you asked me about like the challenge or
Your challenges, yeah, with two
yeah.
boys.
My only challenge is really, am I doing this right? Like I constantly think about
Mm, mm.
am I gonna mess this up or mess my kids up, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah.
truly, I think a lot of the things that I've been working on in myself and my inner self has translated into my kids, because I'm big a proponent for show your kids, don't tell them. And so
Right.
everything that I do is an example for them, and everything that I
Yeah,
say is an example for them. And I think the best
yeah.
way to parent is just to show them that it's, you know, you're never also being vulnerable around them. I noticed that they are also allowing themselves to be vulnerable and having an open channel of communication. To be
Right.
perfectly honest, my biggest fear as a mom is a lot of these teenage suicide. That's
Yes.
one of the things that it comes through my mind, and I work really hard to get it out of my mind
Yeah.
by feeding my mind positive thinking and consuming positive content and whatnot. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it comes in and out, but especially when there's, I don't really watch television. I don't watch a lot of news, but social media tends to show you some of these things. So those are
I
like the
know
challenge that I have.
it's interesting, the atmosphere that our children grow up in versus what we grew up in. You know, even going back to like the struggles of my mother versus the struggles we have. Think about this. My wife, 9 times out of 10, she's delivering dinner through Uber Eats because we don't have time to prepare a
Yes.
meal, and we don't want to serve just boxes of Kraft mac and cheese every
Correct.
night. Right. So like our parents, they didn't even have that, you know, like they had to go to the grocery store. There was no service that brought you anything or shortcutted your time or schedule. And so like living in today's atmosphere is just so completely different. But you know, I hear you when you talk about insecurities with the kids. I think we all have those. One of my New Year's resolutions is actually patience, because I think
Yeah.
that's the number one thing I struggle with 3 kids. They all want your attention. You have
Yes.
other things you're focused on. And there's nothing worse than when I have to leave on another business trip and I feel
Hmm.
like I've been the angry, grouchy dad who didn't sit down and listen and draw an extra picture or teach, you know, really teaching the kids a craft or skill, and just relying on the circumstances around them to do that. I want to be the same as you. I want to be that parent that
Yeah.
does everything that's the best of their ability to give these children the future to be as big and as bright as they want to be.
Yeah. How I have it's really we have what we call a mom guilt, and then obviously you have dad guilt, right?
Hmm.
And it's really um, being guilty of not being present with them. And how I really combat that is
Right.
when, because I have big dreams and you obviously have big dreams, and how I have really maybe created the guilt to go away is that I include them in some sort of like a meeting. You know, if you're a CMO of Cardone
Yep.
Ventures, and if you look at how you work with your team,
Oh,
and
interesting.
in the corporate world, you really have to, in order for your team to function properly, you really have to not only communicate your vision and mission to them so that they all buy
Right.
into that, but you also have to wheel them back in and make them understand that you have a goal to meet. And you
Right.
can't just play around on social media all the time, that
Right. Right.
are numbers that matters. But so I kind of translated that into my parenthood. Not, not obviously, I don't run my household as a business, but somewhat
Right.
parallel to it. And
Sure. Sure.
so I have meetings with my family, and I just say, hey, look, these are the things that mom have to do, non
Right.
comfortable in order
Right.
for me to achieve the vision that we have as a family.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like today I'm recording in, my bedroom, and the boys are in their bedrooms, and I just let them know, okay, I need like an uninterrupted hour because I'm going to interview Buck Wise, and they already know you,
Oh,
um,
nice. Nice.
but then
That's very cool.
when it's their time, so here's how you can zap that guilt. When it's their time, you need to give it your all. Like if you want to
Right.
give them 1 hour of your day, you have to give them
The
all that one
purest,
hour.
right. The
Yes.
purest hour that you can give them. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was good advice. I was interviewing with the chief brand officer at Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, Michigan. And we were just talking about life and work and schedules. And there was an executive in the room with me, and he'd been at Ford Motor Company for years. And we were talking about traveling. And he said, his kids were all in college. And he's like, man, your kids are so young. And I was like, yeah, how did you get through the travel? And his advice to me was, when you are present at home, be
Hmm.
present at home. He goes, because I guarantee you, they don't remember when you're gone. They
Yes.
remember when you were there and you weren't there,
Hmm.
you
Yep.
know? And so I try to live by that as well. And I love what you're saying about the parallels of work and family and how you tie those together. We have something we teach at CardoneVentures, which is called PPF, which is personal, professional, and financial goals. And
Mm.
those goals, they 110% they intersect with one another. And if you think for a second, you're running a business, and you think for a second that your employees, your team's ability to perform at their highest level isn't affected
Hmm.
by their personal life, that's where I think a lot of businesses fall short, by not
Yes.
understanding the way that those things all intersect. That if you can fix one of them, and the second one, and the third one, that's how you get the most optimized experience with your employees. That's how you get the most out of everyone that's working for you to achieve those
Yes.
goals.
Yeah, you get a lot of production that way. And one of the things that I always say on social media, like there is no professional success that can ever compensate failure within your family unit.
Right, right,
And then the other piece that I always say is that, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present.
right,
So when it comes to parenting, because we work so hard to think that we can achieve perfection as a parent, but we simply cannot.
right.
And so that's, those are the things that I have challenges with, but
Yep,
we do what's best, and we do, work really hard on being present with our sons. And
that's
I think
awesome.
that makes a huge difference, and
Yeah,
you go to parent teacher conference, that's when the validation is there, because
right.
the last parent teacher conference that we went, literally like every single teacher were so happy to meet us, that
Right.
their names are Caden and Taylor, and that you guys are doing a really good job, because your kids are not just nice, but they are kind. and
Mm,
and the teacher says, and you probably know the difference. I'm not, it's like these kids are very kind, and I'm like,
right.
wow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's
congratulations. It sounds like you've done a lot of the hard work. You guys are well on your way, because they're hitting their second phase of development in life, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Is the
that's awesome.
scariest one that I have. It's the
Yeah,
stage of their life that I am mostly worried about. But,
yeah,
I figured what I did the first stage of their life, if I keep doing it the second stage, I think we'll be fine.
yeah. That's perfect. I think you've got it all figured out, actually. That's the other thing to remember, is that we're all just trying to figure it out. And there really is no one perfect way to do it. And everyone's trying their hardest. And I think, to your point, the pressures of social media, people get so wrapped up in them. And it's like, nobody's perfect. We're all just trying to do what's best and survive. And if
Hmm.
we would take the time to give ourselves the accomplishment and give ourselves a little bit of congratulatory time, I think that you shouldn't beat yourself up so much.
Yeah. And so anyways, what is your biggest challenge as a parent? Do you have the same challenges as I mentioned, or do you feel like, gosh, why are we having other people watch our kids? Like,
Yeah,
do you ever like think about that, of how it's going to
it's
impact your children?
I've got two challenges that I face right now. And the first one's a big one, and it's just patience when I'm with them because, I work in a pretty aggressive business environment and it's
Mhm.
very fast paced. And so I get home and I want my family to operate in sort of the same manner. And a 4-year old or a 6-year old or a 1-year old, they're not at the developmental stage where you can, those expectations can be there, So it's like you have to slow down and get into a different mode. And so for me, that's sometimes hard. So I struggle with, taking a deep breath and just sitting on the floor and letting them
Mhm.
color outside the lines and let it, it's like we just want them to be so perfect and you want to teach them and they get frustrated. It's like baseball with my oldest son. I want to teach him how to hit the ball. And so I get him all the gear and he's excited. And then 5 minutes in, he's in tears because he doesn't want to hit the ball anymore because dad's telling him how to do it 16 times and it's not fun for him. And you're like, oh, what am I doing? I can't even teach my kid how to play baseball. So I struggle. I think we all struggle with a lot of those same general things. One thing that's interesting is my oldest son recently, he's turned 6 now. He's in kindergarten. He's become very emotional. And that's
Wow.
been something new for us. We've seen other kids that are hypersensitive and hyper aware, and he's a bit of, you know, he's a bit of a creative savant in that way. He's told that he has the best handwriting, even like a kindergartner, even
Wow.
out of first, second, and third grade students. His handwriting's impeccable, and his art projects stand out from everyone else's art projects. And but he's like a really emotional kid lately. You could call it whatever you want. OCD. He's very particular with what he wants and the way he wants it. And he gets frustrated easily. So maybe there's a little bit of me in there where he's got very specific expectations, and when those expectations aren't met, he's very upset about them. So my wife and I are going through, like, do you tell your kid not to cry? Do you, like, hey, don't cry about that, that's not something to cry over? Or do you teach them why they shouldn't be emotional about certain things? So we're like on Google. We're Googling this stuff. Our parents couldn't Google this stuff, but we're trying to figure out, like, what do you do with a really talented, smart kid who's just hypersensitive at this stage in his life?
Hmm.
So,
I Do you
yeah, and
ask
I don't
them,
have
and
the answer. I
do
don't
you
have the
check in
answer
with
though.
them every now and then, of like how school, and is there any troubles and things of that nature?
Yeah, of course. Every day we check in and we talk about what they did in school and what conversations they had. And, we definitely, he brings his projects home and we go through them and look at them and we hang them up on the fridge. And so, yeah, and she's, obviously I can't take a lot of the credit. My wife is pretty amazing. She does a lot of the heavy parenting lifting for me, as I have to travel a lot. But, um, yeah, we do those things. It's just, we read that at this stage in their life, this is just something they start to experience, and as they become their own little human, they
Yeah.
start to develop their own personalities this way. It's fun and exciting, but also challenging at the same time.
6 to 10 is such a flagship stage of a kid's life. I believe that's when
Yeah,
they begin to access a lot of their emotional um, feelings, and they begin
right,
to let it out. It's
right,
like they
right,
just found it and now they're using it too much.
right.
And
That's funny.
so my 10-year-old is very much like that. My 13-year-old Caden, he used to be like that around that age. In fact, he's such a perfectionist that when he got like one wrong out of 5 questions, he
Yeah.
came into my car when I picked him up at school and started crying really hard. And I'm like,
Oh
that
no.
is a good thing, but that's also a problem when he thinks that
Yeah,
making a one error out of 5 and really getting 80% of the whole thing was like a sad thing for him. So
that's crazy. I
we had to
know.
go through that stage with our oldest, but then our youngest has always been like, whenever he tells a story, he's very emotional no matter what the
Yeah,
story.
Yeah.
So I think they just all go through that stage. So they'll grow
Yeah,
out
it
of it.
sounds like it. It sounds like it. Yeah, I think it's how you handle it in those stages that affects the way they come out of them, right?
Yeah. What are the names of your
Yep.
children?
We've got Logan, Liam, and Charlie. And Charlie is, we for short we call her Charlotte. She's the only girl in the
Poor
entire
guy.
family. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So tell us
Yeah.
about Buck. Like, what is it's funny because your Instagram is about Buck. So now
It sure is. It's all about me. That's right.
you get to tell us all about you and your progression in everything that you've been doing. And I
Yeah,
know that
sure.
like for me, it's all about impact for me. And I want to
Yeah,
make a huge impact. And how do I do this? And also, you know, pay my bills and make my family happy and
of
pay
course.
all the dues. But tell me about Buck and how Buck got here.
Yeah, boy. That's a really, I can give you I'll give you a shorter version. There's so many fun, exciting details, but like I mentioned earlier, I started in traditional broadcast and really honed in on how to connect with audiences, build communities, tell stories. And,
Mm-hmm.
essentially that went from traditional media into the digital space, and a lot of those skills and a lot of that creativity transcended into digital marketing. um, I was fortunate when I worked for CBS. They allowed me to build my own small agency, and it was called Trending New Media, and I had about 5 employees, a small little agency shop in Detroit, Michigan. And I worked with Major League Baseball, Advanced Media, Detroit Tigers, North American International Auto Show, Valvoline Oil. I had some pretty good sized clients for owning a small independent agency shop. But that agency experience allowed me to learn some of the fundamentals of business ownership and
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to be a leader and to build a team. And the other things that taught me were, account services and how to really super serve a customer, and a lot of really good things that you don't, on the creative talent side of broadcast, you don't learn those things. And so
Yep.
I needed that experience in order to be able to do what I'm doing today. And so from the small agency, I ended up going into rather large brand work and a large agency career, where
Mm-hmm.
I worked for honestly the largest creative agency in the world, which is called Wunderman Thompson, which is part of the WPP network. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to work on brands such as Starbucks and Nike and PayPal and Google, and the list just goes on and on. Nestle, CPG. I worked on Sweet Tarts candy and all of the fun things inside of Nestle. And that's where I really cut my teeth on Fortune 500 $1 million branding campaigns, and budgets. So I've done everything from the creative side to the small business side to the large enterprise. My last role before I joined CardoneVentures was SVP of marketing and partnerships for the world's largest agency, Wunderman Thompson. And I started to learn more about third-party data and the relationships with all of those wonderful platforms like SAP and Salesforce that allow those things
Mm-hmm.
to happen. And so I, in my life, I've been called a utility player. Sometimes people call them unicorns. And I think the biggest lesson for me has been, that it's great to be that utility player. So occasionally people ask me if I have time to do mentorship programs with them. And it
Mm-hmm.
is something that I really do enjoy doing, is helping, young entrepreneurs that are trying to make a difference, people that really want to do something with their life. I enjoy
Yes.
helping people that want to do that. And so I think the biggest question I get asked is, how did you go from A to B to C to D? They're all somewhat similar, but definitely different. And my
Right.
learning lesson was taking steps backwards to go forwards. I think everyone thinks they can just move forward at lightning speed. And for me, I had to take sacrifice, risk, and cuts. When I sold my small agency in Detroit, Michigan, and decided to move back to Portland, Oregon, I didn't have a job with Nike, and I had to work really hard for months to get my
Mm-hmm.
foot into the Nike door, and to have conversations and communication the same way that big enterprise creative agencies were having those conversations. I had to fit in, and I had to learn and adapt and mold myself into something new. I had to reinvent myself. And so that's something I'm super passionate about, is helping people reinvent themselves and do what you do, make a bigger impact. So
Yeah.
that's what brought me to today, working with CardoneVentures. I'm working with one of the smartest entrepreneurs I've ever met in my entire life. His name is Brandon Dawson. He's a 50-50 partner of the Cardone Enterprise Network. So
Mhm.
if you know Grant Cardone, he is,
Yes.
he is also a massive success and a force to be reckoned with. And not just the sales arena, but also now in the real estate space. He's
Mhm.
changing lives, and that's something that he talks about. Is, he likes making money, but he likes changing lives, and he likes making an impact, and helping people. It's all about helping people at the end of the day. And so what Brandon and I are doing is we're helping businesses that want to scale
Mhm.
understand the fundamentals and the core essentials that those businesses need in order to do that. And the reason we're able to do that is because I have the marketing wherewithal and the experience to understand how somebody should take a look at their strategy and build an audience and connect and create opportunities to, not just have relationships, but also to sell products, and how those all operate with. We've got Brandon Dawson, who's, he's got record-breaking experience in history selling one of his companies, Audigy, at 77 times EBITDA, which is just unheard of in the
Wow.
business space. He's one of the youngest entrepreneurs in the country to ring the New York Stock Exchange bell and go public with a company. And so, he is just an unbelievable source of knowledge and wisdom, and he's been there and done that, and he's had the ups and downs and failures and successes. And so he can come into any business and really tell them at whatever phase they're at in their life. It's amazing to watch him talk to businesses and say, I know exactly what you're going through, I know where your pain points are, and I know how to solve them. And unequivocally, every time he has that conversation, he 100% does understand that. And so, he asked me to join him in his effort to help businesses transform themselves and scale. And I didn't want to miss an opportunity to be a part of, if you've studied Brandon Dawson and what he's done in his life, I would never miss an opportunity to be a part of it as he goes on round 3 and round 4. So we're
Yeah.
building our own team and scaling our own consultancy as we work around the country with all different types of businesses, dentists and roofers and doctors. And so that, in a nutshell, that's my entire life. And I'm just super blessed and fortunate. I have nothing to complain about. I've got a great family. I've got an unbelievable opportunity from a career side. I feel blessed and fulfilled from my personal, professional, and financial goals. It's just like the future is massively bright, and what I enjoy is connecting with like-minded people like you, Karen, who just want to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And you've got the strength and knowledge to want to 10x your life and go bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, you said something about reinventing yourself. How how do you find it challenging to reinvent yourself, or do you like, for me, because for me it was scary in the beginning,
Yeah,
but it was exhilarating once I'm like, if I could do that,
right.
what else am I capable of doing?
That's
What else
exactly
can
it.
I do?
I think confidence is the key. And so when you use the word scary, I see that as really, do you have the confidence to A, do what you do, but B, believe in yourself enough to do it, and C, the ability to tell other people who you are and what you do in a way that is trusting and organic, and in a way that they will believe it just as much as you implicitly believe it yourself. And I think that there's a lot of strategy and tactic that goes into how you do it, and
Hmm.
it just depends where you're coming from and where you're going. But the biggest piece of advice that I give away is you have got to be able to tell your story, and you've got to sit down and craft it out. And you
Mm-hmm.
really, because you just, people talk about first impressions. You only have so much time. And when that opportunity, when lightning strikes and it's right in front of your face, are you going to be prepared to tell that story of who you are and what you do in a way that's going to be compelling and authentic to that person? And if you haven't really done the homework on yourself to understand what that is, you'll never figure it out. A good example of that is I met with Nike executives, and they said, "So Buck, tell me what you do." I wiggled my way into their office. This was the head of digital for Nike at the time. And his name was, it was Musa Tariq and Jesse. I believe Jesse was in the room as well. And I said, "I do this and I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that." And they were like, "Wow, you do everything." And I said, "We're not hiring a senior I do everything role. That doesn't exist. There's no senior I do everything." And it's because people go so quickly to a place, and that just shows my insecurity, right? People
Yeah.
go to the place of all the things they're great at because they want to prove so badly that they can be that person,
It's
right?
so true. Mm-hmm.
So we just go to this place of like, I did this, and I know this person, and I met this person, and this person does this. And you just start vomiting this
Yep.
stuff out of your mouth because you're so insecure. So you think you have to oversell yourself. The
Yeah.
truth is you have to be concise and very specific about what your core principles and fundamentals of who you are and what you want to do are. It's like, and that goes for like creating a business as well. You
Yep.
have to understand how in 10 to 15 seconds you can talk about your business in a way that connects with that consumer, that lets them not just understand what your products and services are, but what you stand for. And that's the same thing from a personal brand story, is what are the things that you stand for? And I had to learn the hard way to build that, because I was, shoot out of a room. Luckily, I wiggled my way into another opportunity and had the chance to work for Nike for 5 years. But it was a learning lesson for me. And that is the biggest piece of advice I can give when we talk about transforming yourself.
Yeah. Well, we go into this like proving everybody else that you are a great person and you have
Right.
great accolades and you have a great resume. So we go into this resume mode right away instead of
Right.
really telling our story. And I get asked about um, how do I set myself apart? And then I was like,
Right.
well, have you ever sat down and asked yourself, who are you? And
Right.
that's truly how, and like, they make it so complex when it's so simple. Like, who are you from your core? And then I get asked like, hey, I'm starting a podcast. What should I title it? Is this like, these are the ideas that I have. And I'm like, I don't care about your ideas. I care about who do you think you are in this world? Who do you think you
Right.
represent? What are you all about? And so I give them examples. So like for me, being like mother hustler is just a word, but being
Right.
one is like an actionable one. Like
Right.
you have to perform as a mother, and also can you do both, you know,
Right.
greatly? Can you be a great mom and also a great businesswoman?
Right.
And if you cannot, and you have all these excuses how you cannot be both, then you are
Right.
not being. And
Yeah.
so for me, I titled my podcast based on who I am. And the rest
Right.
of your audience will just catapult back into you and get attracted to you
It's so
because
true.
because they can resonate with you. I think we go into this attraction mode, like we can create these resumes so we can attract good people. You can
Yes.
attract people that will forever follow you and will buy whatever you sell because they feel like that you are them,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
That's such good advice. It's so true. Yeah.
So it's like, don't complicate it, just keep it simple. I
Yeah.
like to
Right.
do
It
that
really
too.
is.
Cool.
Yeah.
So one question for you. Is there any question that you wish you would be asked that nobody ever asked you?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I've ever been asked that question. I think that's the question that I would like to be asked that nobody ever asked me. Uh, you know, um, Boy, that's a good one. A question that nobody ever asked me that I wish they would. Um, I get a lot of career questions. I get a little bit of personal questions. It's been fascinating for me to talk about the way that translates from my mom and motherhood and her ability to transfer. No one has ever asked me. That's why I love what you represent and what you're doing, because I think there's been a stigma around motherhood. There's
Mm.
been, I was fortunate enough to work for an all-female agency called Swift. I don't know if you've heard of Swift in Portland, Oregon, but Liz Valentine is the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were 4 female executives, and I was one of 3 male executives. And it was like 60% something female creatives, which is just unheard of in the space. And there's just such a stigma around females in the workplace and females and entrepreneurial. And so like, it's so great to like be able to get a fresh perspective from you, and to hear your journey of how you've been able to cope with and maintenance both being a great mom, but also being this stellar entrepreneur, So I think those questions in the beginning were really the questions that were fascinating to me that nobody else asks.
Thank you. Well, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, there's always a mother behind them or a wife behind them,
Yeah.
and like I kudos to you because I saw your 10-year anniversary with your wife and you treated
Thank
her like
you.
a queen.
I
So,
have to. I have to. I got no
you
choice.
have
If I don't
to.
have her, I got nothing. I got to keep her happy.
Yeah, and so there's always that, and there's so much male. It's dominated by men in like the higher level corporate level, even in the business world. And we forget that there are women that supports that. And it's a support system, right? And I
Yeah.
that's why I love Grant Cardone, because the same way that you do, like you put your women on a pedestal.
Yeah.
You're very strong men and very driven men, but really honoring the woman around your lives. And he talks a lot
Right.
about his mother all the time. So
Right. Right. It's
thank
true.
you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. This was great. I was very honored to be on this podcast. Amazing things.
Thank you. What's your message to your kids
Today, or the message that I want them to hear when they're older?
today?
Today. Okay. I think the message to the kids is um, you know, to be confident in who you are, and unapologetically comfortable doing what you want to do and being who you want to be, whatever that is. And that, dad's going to be proud no matter what it is.
That's awesome. What is your
Yeah.
message to your wife?
Uh, don't ever leave me. I can't do anything without you. You're my everything. Yeah. Like I just like that's so hard. It's so hard to put into words. Um, yeah, it's just like my message to her is just so much thanks and gratitude, honestly.
That's awesome. Before I last
Yeah.
or ask you the last question, where can
Yeah.
my listeners find you?
I think Instagram, listen, I know TikTok is what's next, and
I
I'm on there.
know.
If you want to join me on TikTok, look for Buckwise on TikTok. But yeah, there's not you don't get the messaging on TikTok. I don't like the DMs. The one-to-one messaging on TikTok is not as good as Instagram. I mean, you and I
Yes.
found each other on Instagram. Instagram is my business portal right now. I love it.
Me
Yes, I know
too.
it's creative, and it's lifestyle, whatever, but about Buck on Instagram would be awesome. I'd love to, any of your listeners that want to follow along, I'd love to follow you back and hear more stories of success like yours. That would be awesome.
Thank you. One last question before I let you go. What is your definition of mother hustler? When you heard that word, what came into
Yeah.
your mind?
My wife immediately, like 2 jobs, 3 kids. She just flew from Miami to Portland with 3 kids by herself, no nanny, and I was like, that's just it's just a superhuman freak. Like
Mm-hmm.
men don't have the ability to do that. I would never be able to take 3 kids across the country on an airplane. I would lose my mind. I would jump out of the airplane, you know, and not to mention she's working 16 real estate deals. She's running corporate real estate for Columbia Sportswear. She's, you know, I mean, it's just unbelievable. When I hear that word, I think of women like you and like her that are able to operate at these levels that most people can't even operate at, you know?
Yeah. And on a different
Yeah.
different generation too, our own mothers, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome, Buck. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you
Yeah.
for your wisdom and all the business wisdom that you left with us. It'll forever be engraved in my podcast. So thank you
Love it.
so much.
Love it. You're so sweet and so kind to allow me the chance to be on your podcast. And I wish you a massive amount of listens this year in 2020. And so hopefully everybody on their, whether they're listening on their Anchor app or their iTunes app, hopefully they'll continue to follow you and be a part of your journey in 2020. So thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.